with all of that in mind, what was your intent then when you started on Not Forgotten? Or what would end up being...
I didn't know what I was doing. I think I was listening to a lot of house music out of New York at the time. Mainly, I mean, some of the labels that come out of my mum, particularly from New York. And I was... Suddenly, I got the idea that I wanted to make a record, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I mean, I got this equipment, I bought this equipment, I got a bank loan and bought a sampler and a keyboard, and then I went to see this film called Mississippi Burning, and there's a scene in it where he says, "What's wrong with these people?" That's where the sample for Not Forgotten came from, which is great because I'll probably get sued now, won't I, for saying that? So the idea of Not Forgotten initially was to make an alternative version for a soundtrack to Mississippi Burning, and the music from Mississippi Burning was made by a guy called Trevor Jones, and I liked the music, and that was in my head the idea, and then the simplicity of the bass line and everything just seemed to come to me. That's the sort of reggae influence, and the repetitive nature of the track, and the sort of musical elements, the ethnic elements, all those elements that have continued in Leftfield largely, not every track, but often before Paul got involved, were in that track. I think it for some reason I just pulled influences and samples from things that I thought were really good and made a piece of music and thought nothing of it.
Okay.
And managed for some reason had the confidence to take it to someone. When I played it to someone, and in the back of a car, actually, a guy called Neil Cole, who's now Jum Jum. Right. I knew Neil Cole then, and I played it in the back of the car, and these guys said to me, "That's really original piece of music." And I thought, "Oh, is it? Oh, I just made it at home. I just knocked it out and didn't know what I was doing. No reverb, no compression, just all made in a sampler, an S950, Akai S950 sampler, which actually has a natural sort of compression in it, and so it makes things sound quite good." And then I just took it to a record company called Rhythm King, and they decided to put it out, which was a big surprise to me.
And you mentioned the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Have you always had a visual approach to music, or?
I always. It's funny. I imagine what it feels like for people to listen to it, and I've done that since the beginning. You know, for some reason, I was doing something yesterday, a new piece of music, and you know, even now I'm playing it and I'm thinking, you know, I can't help but analyse it as I go along, you know, imagining if I heard it for the first time or I heard it in a live environment, what it would do to me. Would I like it? Would I question it? Is it doing what it's meant to do? So the best for me when I'm, you know, and I think when Paul also, who, you know, made the first, obviously very strongly made the first two albums, both of us had a really visual approach to making music. We both were quite in touch with what the point of it was. You know, we were, you know, and I think and I still am quite hard on what I put in, you know, to make it go somewhere where I think it needs to go. I will change things and remove things, and to varying degrees of success. You know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I do feel that the best things that I do have some form of a direction before I start.
So, and you mentioned Paul, obviously, but when did the direction for what would become leftism then kind of arrive, or when did you kind of come up with where you wanted to go?
Well, I mean, obviously, Paul changed everything. I mean, Paul, Not Forgotten, he remixed Not Forgotten. He brought in a real club mentality, because he spent a lot more time in clubs. He was starting to DJ. He knew what made people dance, and he brought a toughness in, maybe, yeah, and refinement to things, which, you know, and often in the early days, quite often, the way it often would work, it was that he'd take what I did and change it and bring a new approach. But that was, and then very quickly, we both were throwing ideas in together to sort of, and it started through. It started after Not Forgotten. There was another single, and then we got in on remixing, and the whole. I think we learnt over a period of 2 years, because we remixed an awful lot of people, and it was very club centred but intense. We still brought this intensity to what we did, which I think had always been there from the first record. So he was in a sort of more pop, not poppy, jazzy influenced band, and he was quite a good drummer as well. And when he heard Not Forgotten, he just said, you know, he suddenly sort of saw a direction that that something could go in, and he really sort of took it and understood it. And then he also listens widely to a whole range of stuff, you know, a whole range of different types of things, and was quite in touch with new dance music and introduced a lot of stuff to me that I hadn't heard, you know, and I think we had the similar influences.
Okay. And what was it like then? Because you say you've always been somebody who's very, very deliberate in what you do in music and very particular. What was it like sharing that with somebody to kind of not be the sole proprietor of what you were making?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't take very long before we were working together. So I mean, we seem to sort of have a real understanding, and we shared, especially with Leftism. There was a great deal of sharing going on, you know, and the ability to not get upset. I don't remember ever really getting upset working on stuff, you know, thinking, oh, that's my bit, you know, oh, I put that in and I want that to be in, and I know it's not very good, but we seem to be quite open to changing things for the good of the track, and him likewise, you know, we both would do things and then do something and improve it. I mean, we worked really intensely as well. It didn't come easy, you know, it wasn't an easy thing to make. It never was. Every track was an intense sort of journey, and quite tough. I mean, very few tracks just flowed out. I mean, when we were making Leftism, once we got into the journey, there was a couple of tracks that happened quite quickly, but most of them were a very slow process, and things changed radically while we were making them. I mean, things like Open Up changed radically as the journey went, you know.
At that point, what was the drive? Because well, you didn't have a debut album out, so this was going to be the first body of work. What was the drive? And then, like you say, because it's quite hard.
For the first 3 or 4 years, I mean, the drive purely was this sort of. I mean, I think Paul maybe sort of pulled me along and was more, you know, I think he was more, pushy about success. Ambitious, yeah, I think so, yeah. Ambition was, I think he had more of a knowledge of, he'd had experiences with record deals that had fallen through and been treated quite badly. I hadn't had any of that. He was more in touch with the record business. I was just trying to think, well, can I make a living out of this? Because I had a child, I had a first baby then, and I was teaching still, and I wasn't sure that, you know, I kept for quite a long time, I kept 2 jobs going.
Right.
You know, I was teaching during the day and then doing stuff at night. I mean, I did ridiculously long hours. And then there was a drive. We were a team. We became quite close and also with our manager Lisa Haran. You know, when Lisa took over, you know, we were a quite formidable group. We felt very sure of ourselves and probably quite arrogant, and we turned down as much as we took on. We were very sure about, we took on tracks that, especially for remixing, that we felt helped our career, and you know, it was all about the music, actually. It was all about the music. We didn't think any more of that. And then gradually, as we became more and more successful, all these things started to fall into our laps. Record deals, my God. You know, being in control in the studio, no one telling you what to do. All that happened when we got to Leftism. We had to earn that ability. No one walked into the studio in Leftism. Well, we financed it ourselves. Nearly all of Leftism we financed from our remix work. So record companies we didn't have. Near the end, we signed the Sony deal. I can't remember what point, but we did sign the deal. Maybe quite, but I mean, we were in complete control of everything, and we felt like, you know, we had the power, and it remained that way right the way through the early Leftfield years.
When you made that album, was there any intent to tour and play live as well?
No, it wasn't even an issue. We never thought about touring. We never thought about live music. We hated the idea of festivals. Playing live for us was the absolute opposite of what electronic music should be. We had to, they had to drag us kicking into this to make it go live. It was a different time. We didn't think we needed to. We'd come out of live bands. Both of us had been in various forms of live bands for years. We hated all that stood for, and all the people that we met in that world we didn't like. And until we worked out a way of doing it, and we brought in our own people, live was just not. I mean, I remember seeing the Chemical Brothers and Underworld, and we were getting into it then. But I think Underworld were doing it live, and I think we saw it, and we were very suspicious of it all. We just felt it was joining the rock circus.
Right.
You know, we believed that electronic music was a club music and a DJ music, and wasn't something that anyone should be putting on the stage and looking at. We were very anti the whole idea of looking at a band. It's DJ culture. It was about the music for us, and